We interrupt with breaking news from WWL Louisiana.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Katie Moore alongside Sharice Gibson, and we are here covering the Homeland security operation that is underway across southeast Louisiana.
According to our reporters, we're getting some information into our newsroom that there have been multiple operations that are happening across the New Orleans metro area. For that, we want to bring Paul Murphy in, who has been covering this and heard from multiple sources that we have seen different rates happening in different areas. What are you seeing, first of all?
Well, from what we're hearing, there have been operations from the river parishes, the East Bank of Orleans, Elysian Fields, Lowe's, to the West Bank, the Home Depot in Gretna, over to Kenner, where there was a construction site that was also hit by this ICE operation. Okay. So it's been widespread. From what we're being told is that the agents, they pull up to the scene. They're there, they question the people on the scene, and then they're gone within 15, 20 minutes. It's a quick hit, and then they're on to the next location.
All of them wearing masks, all of them, with their identities hidden. Seems like they're hitting some low-hanging fruit, so to speak.
Well, it seems like they're hitting some of the more obvious spots today, with that being the home improvement stores, some construction sites, those types of things where you would normally see some of these day laborers hanging out, waiting to get hired. When we were at the Lowe's on Elysian Fields, we talked to one gentleman who helps these folks out and said that they were just standing there like they always do, waiting to be hired by contractors, painters, and the like. And the Border Patrol just pulled up and ended up leaving with 15 being detained. We talked to one contractor who said that it's a shame because these are guys that he's worked with. To his knowledge, they don't have long criminal records or criminal records, and they do a good job. And they're just trying to make a living like the rest of us.
I think that's where some of the confusion sets, because initially when these raids were started, and when we talk about anyone with Border Patrol or any ICE agents, usually they typically go for people who have former or current U.S. criminal convictions, people who have pending criminal charges within the United States or pose a danger or a threat to the United States. And also they do look for people with immigration laws, including visa overstays. For instance, or people who have expired visas or maybe expired green cards. Are they asking, or did that contractor happen to say, are these agents asking people about their status in the country, or how do they know necessarily who they're picking up?
That is something that we don't know at this point, whether we don't know exactly what they're looking for. I know from talking to the community groups on Monday and Tuesday that they were advising that these immigrants carry their papers with them, and if you are a legalized citizen, to carry your passport with you, so you can at least identify who you are and what your status is.
Yeah, this is a situation that we've not really seen in this country, and so to have it happening here is surprising to a lot of people, shocking to these communities, terrifying to them from what we've heard from these community organizations. There's a lot of fear out there today.
Well, I was just talking with one woman who is with the Families United, and she said that this has been a terrible, terrible day. There's a Home Depot in Gretna for members of her community. A lot of them have been in fear ever since this operation was announced. A lot of folks staying home from work, treating these operations as COVID-19, not going out on the streets. And there's also, I'm told, although we haven't been able to confirm these numbers from Jefferson Parish, but we're told that there are students that are also staying home for fear of coming home and not having their parents there. So there is a lot of fear in this community, in the Hispanic community, in the immigrant community here locally, and if there's any silver lining in there, there's a lot of groups that have really stepped up and they're helping these folks. Like the Voice of the Community is one of them. Families United is another one. Families United in Action, and others that are out there trying to help these folks.
And when we talk about the number of people they picked up, talk to me about initially when this was all announced that we would have Border Patrol agents coming down here. And by the way, this is very different from the Louisiana National Guard that planned to be here before Christmas. Initially, there was a number that was thrown out there of 5,000 arrests, and then that number was sort of thrown out of the window. How do we get to 5,000, or are we aware necessarily of exactly how many they're targeting now?
My belief and my guess is that is just a number of folks that they think they have in this area that may have immigration problems, or that have some criminal exposure. That's not to say that they plan to detain 5,000 people or 4,000 people or whatever the number might be, but that is the number that they believe are exposed to some problems immigration-wise.
Honestly, we've heard very little out of Homeland Security itself about what they plan to do, where they plan to go. A lot of these operations are being done in secret until now. And what we found out is through sourcing, through reporting by the Associated Press about what these planned operations might be. So it's interesting to see how it's differing from what we first heard and how this might play out. I think there are so many questions, at least in my mind, about who it is that they will be going after. Initially, like Sharice mentioned, the goal was to go after people with criminal records and with criminal exposure. But I think the civil administrative risks are out there too for a lot of these people, right? I mean, that's what immigration violations are.
Well, I talked to one immigration attorney on Monday, and she told me that one of her clients went in for his annual check-in with ICE on Monday, and he's never had any problems. He's been working. But they ended up detaining him, and I don't know if he's now going to be deported. But that's just what's starting to happen, and that's what's creating these kernels of fear out there.
I did some reporting about this on Instagram and on social media, but when I looked up the backlogs for the immigration system and for those immigration court proceedings that people have to go through before they get deported, I think one of the things that we have heard from immigration attorneys is that the process takes so long that people build lives and build their families up in the meantime. And so it sounds like what Homeland Security is doing right now is saying these people who are waiting to find out if they're going to be deported need to do that in their home countries, essentially. And so it makes you wonder if they're just going after that backlog, if those are the people who are there, who are being targeted, or what that greater group of people is.
Yeah, and you know, Rachel Hanley did a story not long ago, because Rachel and I have a conversation about exactly who's being detained, and ICE typically lists the number of people just based on by quarter, and to my knowledge, earlier this quarter in the New Orleans region, most of the Southeast region, the data shows that in the first quarter of 2025, most of the people detained by ICE in New Orleans did not have criminal records. About 3,500 classified as other immigration violations. So again, this could be an overstay of a visa. This could be something that happened in the past. While about 2,500 were being labeled criminal convictions or pending criminal charges. But either way, people are concerned. I've heard from people within the community who say that they're walking around with, again, papers that are listing their status, letting people know what's going on. So I don't necessarily know how they target. Obviously, you said these are places where typically you can see people from another country, outside of the Lowe's, outside of Home Depot, construction sites. And also these people that are getting picked up, we saw this as an opportunity, or an example rather. There are projects that are happening in New Orleans, some public and some private projects that have gotten paused or delayed for an amount of time because some people are saying workers are not showing up. And we reported on that recently about restaurants closing because workers weren't showing up.
Yeah, on Monday, we went to probably about a half a dozen restaurants, 2 in New Orleans and 3 or 4 in the Kenner area, where the ownership, the management decided just to close down rather than expose their workers or their customers to this immigration sweep.
That is, something that I think is a business interruption at a time when people need money the most. So I imagine that's difficult for them.
We're also waiting to see what type of impact this will have on the service industry as a whole. As you know, a lot of the the service workers, the housekeepers, and others that work in the downtown hotels are from other countries, hardworking people from other countries. And if they're afraid to go to work, or if a number of them are detained, then what is the ripple effect going to be on tourism? Mavis Early from the Greater New Orleans Lodging Association told me that so far they're not seeing a whole lot of problems with that, but over time, as long as this thing lasts, we may start seeing some of that in our downtown hotels.
Well, just to recap everyone out there, if you're just joining us, Paul has been reporting on some of the locations where these Border Patrol police have been spotted carrying out their operations here in Southeast Louisiana. And recapping those, most of them are big box stores for construction and things like that. The Lowe's on Elysian Fields, the Lowe's in Metairie, the Home Depot in Laplace, we know is one of the areas. I believe, was there another Home Depot as well that was documented, or just one?
Gretna.
Gretna, the Home Depot over in Gretna in Jefferson Parish. And then we do know of a construction site in Kenner that
Yes.
Border Patrol agents showed up at.
Not far from, it's in that university area,
Right.
not far from West Esplanade and Loyola.
Now, when we first started talking about this, we were, Devin, I believe, did some reporting about where the areas are that we have the largest immigrant populations. Right. And so it seems that that may be part of their playbook.
Well, yeah, we know for a fact that there are a lot of Hispanic residents, mostly Hondurans, living in parts of Kenner. And then we have a lot of Hispanics also on the west bank of Jefferson Parish. And those two areas were hit today by the sweeps.
Many of these people who immigrated here and started building their lives here came after Hurricane Katrina. And anybody who was here at that time knows what a central role they played in the rebuilding of the city. So it's very interesting to see this playing out now, 20 years later.
And I talked with a contractor today over at Lowe's who hires some of the day laborers to help paint. He's a paint contractor. And he told me that by and large, these are hardworking, God-fearing, law-abiding citizens that happen to be from other countries. Right. And that they're not criminals, and they're hardworking, and they are essential to his operation. As you said, after Katrina, and I was here, and you could just see that if not for the immigrant labor force that came in, we would have been years behind in the redevelopment of homes in places like New Orleans East, places like Lakeview, some of the Gentilly, some of the other areas that were hard hit by Katrina.
Yeah, right now you're seeing a number on your screen. We have seen number of reports, a number of comments from people. People have sent us emails. If you do see Border Patrol in your neighborhood, give us a text, 504-529-4444. This is the beginning of what is said to be a number of sweeps that will happen across the Southeast region. We're also seeing some comments unconfirmed here, but comments of some sweeps that are also happening in Gulfport region and the South Mississippi region. So when you talk about 250 Border Patrol agents, you can't imagine them all being in one area. I think visually people think they would see people walking around here, but you go into the surrounding areas where a large portion of the Hispanic and Latino community live. Jefferson Parish has some of the highest numbers of Honduran residents in that community, just in Kenner alone. So I think right now people are still concerned. They're in fear. Kids are out of school right now, and people are wondering if there are people that are criminally convicted. Some people, as you can see, they're saying that this is, I mean, that's fine. We see that. But I think the other people who are just here, people who work at the restaurant that shut down, Taqueria Guerrero, people who work in the hospitality industry who just continue to live their lives, they're the ones that are concerned that they may be caught up in those sweeps.
You know, and on the other hand, you have those that say, well, there's a process that you follow to become a citizen. Right. And if you're not following that process, then you're exposed, right? Right. So you got to look at both sides, but from what we see day in and day out, these are hardworking people that are doing jobs that a lot of people don't want to do. and they're in fear right now.
Yeah.
And that's the shame of it all.
This is certainly a hot button political issue
Right.
on both sides of the political spectrum, with people having strong opinions about it either way. And so it's difficult not to have that mixed up in the conversations that we're having right now, because a lot of this is based in politics. And so as we continue to cover this, it's important to realize that there are two sides to this, and many opinions about what's going on out there. So we want to make sure that we don't, we don't take that lightly here. It's important to us to be fair on both sides as well.
Oh yeah, but again, typically who they said initially when these sweeps started to happen, it was mostly people who were charged with criminal convictions or people who overstayed visas. And as you mentioned earlier, and in our reporting, we've been reporting on this for months now throughout the administration so far this year, that some people who are going to the ICE field offices are going to their appointments. That they're supposed to go in, do their check-ins, are going through the process. And this was a question that I had recently. They have some people who are taking the pathway to citizenship. Mm-hmm. We've reported on tons of naturalization ceremonies happening right here in New Orleans, some happening at the World War II Museum. I don't know if we've necessarily seen any of these naturalization ceremonies happening. I can't confirm whether they've stopped or if all of that process has stopped because some people have stopped going into their check-ins. I did hear about a lot of people not wanting to go into check-ins because they didn't want to be confused as someone who was not abiding by U.S. law.
I think those are two different categories of people probably. There's probably the category of people who are working toward naturalization, and then there are people who are in the process of deportation who are having to go to those check-ins while their court case takes time to come up.
Right.
I'm guessing that is the situation.
One of the things the immigration attorney told me that, it's a catch-22 because you're afraid to go to your ICE and immigration appointments, but then again, if you don't, that's deportable.
Yes.
And
that's what I mean by that. Yes.
Yeah.
That's what I mean by that. People who want to do it the correct way, and they have some people who have done it the correct way or are trying to do it the correct way. For instance, Rachel Hanley did a story on a young lady who was a maid that was working in a home in the Garden District who was recently picked up and is now being held in Basile. And we've talked about this. What's the name of the facilities that they hold people in Gina, Louisiana, and in Basile, Louisiana. We've been reporting on that a lot more often. But she's being held. But she was given a government-issued Social Security card. She had gone through all of the checkpoints. She was working towards citizenship, and I think that she was here, if I'm not mistaken, I don't want to mischaracterize this, but I don't know if she was here on asylum or what were the circumstances that brought her here, but she was recently picked up. And people say, well, she was doing the right thing. So what's the process here? How do you do this the right way now? Or is there a new way that we're doing this? So, I think that's where the confusion comes in, because we have little conversation with Border Patrol agents or with DHS to tell us a little bit more about what's happening.
What exactly they're doing.
Yeah.
I mean, we got a news release for the first time from DHS this morning talking about the operation that they have already been conducting in the area, trying to target people who were, it's unclear if they were criminally convicted or just criminally accused. Some of them may have bonded out of jail here. It's unclear exactly what the backgrounds of some of the people are who DHS put out a release today saying that they had picked them back up. I think those are a lot of questions that we're going to continue to try and drill down on in the hours and days to come. But the long and short of this is this operation has really gained momentum today, but it has significantly been going on since the beginning of the year, really. I mean, we've been continuing to report on incidents. There was the woman in Lakeview who was picked up in front of her house. We, have heard about people who have been picked up in all parts of the metro area leading up to this. So while this is gaining fervor, it's certainly something that's been going on for several months now. You've been reporting on it as well, right?
Absolutely, and it's the elections have consequences, right? And this is the policy of this administration. And when this administration came on board, there was this promise to crack down on immigration, and that's certainly what we've been seeing over the last year.
I believe his campaign promises were mass deportations, and so that's what this is geared toward. So,
and this is just kind of continuing in something that has been going on throughout the year. We have seen this happen, if I'm not mistaken, operations in Los Angeles, operations in Chicago, Charlotte, North Carolina before this one, before coming to New Orleans. And I don't know if you correct me if I'm wrong here, were they in Memphis, Tennessee as well?
they were supposed to be. I think the National Guard was going to Memphis, but I believe there were also immigration situations there too.
Yeah, and you know, and the latest news that is coming from the Trump administration, they have disrupted every single aspect of the immigration system. Of course, we know about the 2 National Guard members who were shot. One, unfortunately, who was killed in the Washington, D.C. area, not too far from the White House. And so there was a list that was released today, actually, of our number of countries where they were disrupting any sort of immigration, asylum aspect, anything. They've just completely dropped those cases. And so we're still getting more information about that. But so this is a very contentious, and as Katie mentioned earlier, it's a very contentious situation. It's a political situation. And you have people who are concerned, who are caught in the middle of this, some who are doing the right thing, some maybe who did come into the country without the proper registration. So I think right now trying to figure out who's getting caught up into this is what concerns a lot of people, Americans on both sides of the aisle.
Yes, who's getting caught in the net, you know?
Well, I'm guessing that after this first round of detainments, we're going to find out pretty quickly who these folks are, or at least in general, what they're being detained for. And then that will give us a little more information going forward.
I have a lot of questions too about what is left behind. For example, you mentioned today there was an effort to move the trucks of all of the people who were taken at that construction site. You know, their trucks are there. So what is happening with that property? What is happening with their families? Are their families also getting taken once they take someone at a construction site? Are Border Patrol agents going to question wives, children? Are they also getting caught in the net? So, I mean, I think those are questions we just don't know the answers to yet.
Well, hopefully we'll be getting more information as time goes by. These were the first overt actions that we've seen as part of this immigration operation. So we're going to try to get those answers for the audience to find out exactly what they're asking these folks, what they have to produce, how many, those types of things.
Yes, and any paperwork that people might need on them in order to protect themselves if they are concerned.
And I feel like this case just continues to escalate. Attorney General Liz Murrell, she posted something just earlier because there was always a comment on how obstructing Louisiana law, if you obstruct any arrest by ICE or by Border Patrol, ACLU is now suing the state of Louisiana for a law that says that you're obstructing. David Hammer recently did a story because we saw a video that we posted from in front of, I believes it's Floor and Decor that is in Gretna. And we saw several ICE agents, Border Patrol agents on top of a man. I think they said that they arrested maybe 4 people. We did extensive reporting on that one. One of the things that they said during that arrest, or one of the agents, I don't know if we clarified necessarily if that was an ICE agent or if there was someone with the sheriff's departments or the department locally, but they said that there was a 25-foot buffer zone that you had to take. And I believe, to my knowledge, David Hammer said that that is simply not true. There was a buffer zone that was passed, but I think that this was kind of put on hold due to an injunction by the court system.
Yes, that's accurate, 100%.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think right now the ACLU of Louisiana, and I'm just taking a look at some of this, they're trying to block, they're suing the state to block the law, making it a crime to interfere with ICE. And I don't know if they necessarily, what interference they mean on that part. I don't know if they want to stop people from being arrested, but they filed a lawsuit on behalf of the nonprofit Immigration Services and Legal Advocacy, arguing that this law violates the First and 14th Amendments by criminalizing protected speech, including Know Your Right presentations that explain immigrants' legal protections during ICE arrests. So that is just the latest in what's happening right now as this begins to escalate. And to your knowledge, Paul, how long are Border Patrol agents expected to be across the Southeast Louisiana, well, the Southeast region, actually?
Well, I mean, there's what was said on the front end, it could be weeks, to what we've seen in the other areas like Charlotte and North Carolina. It seems like they were there for a weekend or a couple days and then they moved on. So we just have to see.
Yeah, I think one of the things that, I know you've covered over the years, let me just say real quick, you see this number on your screen, Border Patrol, if they're in your neighborhood and you see them, text this number, 504-529-4444. We're trying our best to document this fairly and accurately, and so we want to know what's going on in the community so we can tell everyone what's happening out there.
And if you have pictures or video as well, you can send it to that text message.
Absolutely, so that we can, again, more completely cover exactly what's happening out there and let people know what's going on and where. But I think at the heart of this, and you and I have been covering this city for a long time, so has Sharice, but the fact that New Orleans is a sanctuary city, and a sanctuary city is defined as a city, county, or state that limits its cooperation with federal immigration authorities, though the specific policies on that vary. And that, I think, is one of the reasons that, we have seen these operations targeting the city. We heard that from Homeland Security in their release that was issued earlier today about the operations that have already gone on in picking up those alleged criminals that they delineated this morning. But what does it mean to be a sanctuary city, and how do you think that's playing into this?
Well, I think that the city has a long reputation of that, and I think a problem at the jail, they had a sanctuary policy at the jail as well, but that's just Orleans Parish, right? We're seeing these immigration sweeps East Jefferson, Kenner, West Jefferson, river parishes. It's not just New Orleans that are seeing these immigration sweeps.
Yeah, it just makes you wonder, though, because of the large number down here, and because of the fact that you have, the most prominent city really in the state of Louisiana as a sanctuary city, it kind of politically makes it have a bullseye almost.
Yeah, and I think that the cities that they've been to before New Orleans have that same reputation.
Yes. We have seen how this has played out, like you mentioned, at the jail with Susan Hudson, and with questions over the consent decree with the jail, and whether or not, that was going to come into play with the Attorney General and stuff as they were moving to try and change some things about the consent decree. So it's complicated.
Yeah, it's a complicated issue, and it's an issue that continues to transform and morph over time, and it's happening in such a fast way where people are having a hard time keeping up and trying to understand what's happening. Even with the deportation situation, we're talking about the Hispanic and the Latin community, but we also have ICE agents who are targeting Somalis that are in Minneapolis and Minnesota right now. That has been the latest information that's come out. Rachel Hanley also did some reporting on the Vietnamese community. Everyone knows that we have the Vietnamese, a very large Vietnamese population that is in New Orleans. And according to some immigration attorneys in the area, they've most recently started to get more clients, especially from that community as well. So you have to look outside the scope of just the Hispanic community and the Latin community, but there are so many other people who are here who could potentially also be targets. And also, unfortunately, with the number of young children that are being taken out of schools right now, it's to their detriment. They won't be able to get the education that they need. And at one point, schools, you remember, there was a law prior to this administration where schools and churches and was, if I'm not mistaken, houses of worship, schools, and courthouses, if I'm not mistaken, were off limits for people to go inside of. And since that is all kind of out of the window, it leaves no protections for anyone.
Yeah. I think there are a lot of questions, too, about where people are ending up, in which facilities they're ending up in. If you try to look someone up, which I've done in recent days, you have to know the country of origin of the person. You have to know their name, you have to know their date of birth in order to look them up to locate where they are. So there's not a lot of abundant transparency in what's happening out there, and I think that is also causing a lot of fear and concern in people. Is that something you're seeing out there too?
Well, it just seems to be the nature of a federal investigation. A lot of that is done, I don't want to say in secret, but it's a need-to-know kind of situation.
Yeah.
Right.
And that is sort of the federal way of investigating crimes and other things. And that's also true to form here with these sweeps.
Yeah, like we said, we've got very little information about what was actually expected to happen. All we were hearing was what was being reported by the Associated Press from their sources, and then we started to get some more information trickling out from our sources as well. But we didn't hear from Homeland Security, we didn't hear from Border Patrol, we didn't hear from ICE, we didn't hear from any of these agencies directly on what was being planned for our community, with our leaders being kept in the dark as well.
Right. Let's go to, I think we have somebody on the phone right now, Loyola Law Dean Maria Pavon Lopez. Ms. Lopez, are you with us?
Hi, yeah, I'm Maria Pavon, professor of law at Loyola University
in
New Orleans.
Thank you so much, Ms. Lopez, so much for joining us and just giving us your perspective here. I know that things are probably very busy, and if I'm not mistaken, you're still practicing law. I know that we talked a little bit a few months ago about a separate immigration case. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're hearing right now, especially as we start to see more of these sweeps popping up across the area?
I heard that they are in Elysian Fields. I heard that they have a warehouse on Catahoula, and that they're around Poydras, and that people are very scared.
Okay, so you've heard of additional locations that we have not, so we're going to work to confirm those. A warehouse on Chataulas.
Right.
And you said another location in addition to that warehouse?
No, I think that I've heard that they are patrolling the ISIS on Elysian Field Street, and also that they are near Poydras, because the people who work there are pretty scared, even though they have a blue passport, which means you're a U.S. citizen.
Okay, so what are you hearing? We were talking a lot about how when this initially began, the idea was that that Border Patrol, ICE, U.S. Immigration was going to go after people who had criminal convictions or were accused of a crime. What are you hearing about whether or not that is who they're actually picking up?
Oh, they're picking up anyone who looks Latino, Latinx, or Asian, or they are, and they're picking up and then asking questions later.
Okay. Tell us about the legality of that. Is that legal?
Well, here's what happens. We have that the Supreme Court denied certiorari in a case regarding these, what they call roving patrols. But there was one, Justice Kavanaugh, who talked about, some stop, because you have a 14th Amendment right that applies to people, right? It doesn't say citizens, the Fourth Amendment. And so persons, people, but they keep saying, it's a short stop because you speak Spanish or in a place where there's a lot of documented workers. Maybe that could be a case. And that wording of one Supreme Court justice seems to open the floodgate to everyone else.
Yeah,
so it's not legal, but people think it's legal and they're doing it.
Okay, we also heard some questions about this idea that there has to be a buffer around these operations, that there has to be a 25-foot buffer for people who are trying to document them. Do you know anything about the legality of that? Okay,
so I know this is First Amendment law, and I'm an immigration person, but I know enough about the First Amendment to know that the First Amendment applies to the people, and that the government has a right to restrict your speech, and your speech can include bearing witness by reporting to based on time, place, and manner. But the typical example is yelling fire in a crowded theater. The government can prohibit that. How far they can go about saying you have to be 25 feet away, if it's 15, that's all up to interpretation. The Constitution is very, very simple, and then it's all interpreted in case law. So, question mark. Definitely safety comes into play, right? It's 25 feet and up. It seems wrong to me, but there you go. Does that help you?
Yeah. Yes, it certainly does. Your specialty is immigration. We're getting a little bit of reverberating feedback, I think, from our cell connection with you.
Yeah.
But when we talk about, I mentioned this earlier, the backlog of deportation hearings in the U.S., is that kind of fertile ground for what these agents are looking for, as people who are going through that process?
Well, the people who are going through the process are not, deportation hearings are still going on, but those take quite a bit of time. Like, I had someone who I helped starting in February last year, and she wasn't deported until, and she agreed to be deported in the summer. So people who are awaiting deportation typically know when they're supposed to go or have chosen what is called voluntary departure. So I think what they're doing is they're penalizing people for exercising their rights. I know they're trying to and picking up people who have pending applications for lawful permanent residency, but because they had an entry or that they overstayed a visa, the fact that you're married to a U.S. citizen doesn't allow you to avoid being picked up by ICE if they find you.
Can you tell me more about the green card process? I know that there are some people that have been here who have been holding green cards for some time, hoping to become citizens.
Right.
Is that still a viable push?
Green cards are indefinite. Green cards are, they're now red, white, and blue.
Okay.
And they're called permanent resident cards. And you can be a permanent resident of the United States once you get that status through either family or employment base or through later on asylum. You can keep it for a long time, forever. Now, that doesn't mean that if you don't have a DUI, you get into trouble, you couldn't be deported. So the only way to ensure you won't be deported if you're a naturalized citizen is by becoming a citizen. And you can become a citizen between 3 and 5 years after being a permanent resident.
Okay, so you have to go through that sort of documentation process.
Yeah.
And what about the people who are awaiting those deportation hearings? I mean, you mentioned 1.5 years. Is that a typical time frame?
Something like that, because people who are awaiting their deportation hearing use as a defense. I mean, the reason they stick around to have a deportation hearing is because there's like for example, me as a pro bono attorney, when I advise them, you must have a valid defense. Like, if you remove me from the U.S., I will be killed in my country. I have a few of those kinds of cases. So the defense to the deportation is, if you remove me, I'm going to be killed. And so you have a hearing on that, right? But it's not that people just, I'm going to wait until a judge finds me and deports me. No, if they consult with an attorney, and there's a whole list, Unión Migrante has a bunch of lists of potential attorneys, people will find out because I would tell you, by and large, the majority of the Latinx, Asian, Caribbean, African, all these immigrants are here because they have to, right? Because the conditions in their country, like Haiti just fell apart, and now they're going to start returning them. They canceled the temporary protected status for the Haitians because they said it's not in the nation's interest, even though they know they're going to be subject to having a lawless government. I think the guy's called Barbecue, the gang member who runs Haiti.
Yes.
So tell me this, and I'm glad that you mentioned the other nationalities that are here, because I know that we tend to focus on the Hispanic and the Latinx community. Can you talk about, is there anyone else here specifically within our region who you've heard about or who you've heard about being picked up by some of the ICE or Border Patrol agents?
I know definitely people who have African descendants.
African.
Right. So, for example, the Garifunas, who are Hondurans but are Afro-descendants, they're getting picked up in larger proportions. They're Hondurans, but they have the African background. They're getting picked up in huge numbers, right? Because they are profiled based on what they look like. I know there's been, I just attended a presentation yesterday about people who are really, 2 days ago. The Vietnamese population is pretty scared because some of those came after helping the U.S. government in Vietnam. And then what happened was some of the younger generations who were brought here didn't become citizens and then just kind of forgot about it. I also heard about an Iranian woman who they had put away, remember, earlier this year?
Yeah, we covered that.
So, yeah. So the point is, the assumption that who's getting picked up right now is a quote-unquote criminal alien is just not true. They're picking up anyone they can because they want to wake those numbers, the number of immigration arrests and deportations. And there's no reason to do that. There is a whole orderly immigration system, and that big, beautiful bill gave money for more agents, but it didn't give more money, that I understand, for judges or for all the other things that you need in an immigration adjudication system.
Yeah, which is the reason for that backlog that I keep bringing up, because it's, millions of people long waiting to go through that process. And I think, there are questions about how quickly this is all moving, given that those people have been waiting for some of them up to a decade, right?
Yes. Some of the people that have been picked up, I don't know if you're representing them. Can you take us through this process? Are they immediately being deported? Are they being detained?
No, they're all being detained.
They're being detained. So what's the process?
Well, typically, for example, I'll give you an example. The first one, that I told, she was driving without a license because, under the law, they don't want to allow driver's licenses to be had by people without papers, although 19 states have driver's license because driving doesn't really correlate to your status. It correlates whether you can drive or not. But anyway, she got picked up. She was someone who did nails as an independent contractor. So she really wasn't violating immigration law by working because she just worked from her home. But I think she had an expired visa or had come across the border. I forget, one of those two ways. The typical way, you come in with a coyote, or you have a visa that expires. Neither of them are particularly lawless, right? One is you let a visa expire, and one is you left your country because you're fearing persecution. So anyway, this woman, Garifuna Honduran, is driving, gets picked up in one of the, I don't know if it was I-10 or which, and they picked her up and they put her in jail, and she was there, and she had a U.S. citizen daughter too, who just recently got sent. She was deported eventually after we looked and saw that there were no relief for deportation. And then the poor U.S. citizen little daughter had to stay with an aunt. This person had a U.S. citizen sister, but the wait for U.S. citizen siblings is like 20-some years
Wow.
when they apply for ULA.
Yeah, that was one of my big questions, was what happens to the families of these people, because many of them have U.S. citizen children, like you mentioned.
Right. Oh, this woman who I'm telling you her story, she had a U.S. citizen sibling, and that's in the 20 years range for them to ask for you, and a U.S. citizen child that can only ask for you if the child is already over 18 or 21. But my poor client got detained in jail. And right now they're even detaining in Angola, which they didn't use. And I understand they're using the people who are undocumented who are detained in Angola to pick because they're not citizens, and it's believed that they don't have to be paid. That's what I understand.
My other question was about women. Where are women being taken? Are they being taken to the same facilities as men?
Women. My client, if I recall correctly, was in just a regular jail in, I forget which parish. And I think if it's a small enough facility, they can segregate them. I don't know. And so I can give you names if you want of people who are more on the ground, because I just hear sort of through the legal. I don't hear on those kinds of specifics. But I will tell you what I know about these detention facilities. There's very little by way of medication. I just heard about a case. It wasn't here, and I'm finished, but in California or where? Arizona. The judge said they had 48 hours to give you a blanket, or one of those aluminum blankets, So for 2 days, people have to be in the cold. I'm like, really? Anyway, sorry. I know this is.
If you can you tell me more just about you said they get detained. They're not. Does a legal process play out? Are they able to? I know that you probably are overwhelmed with the number of clients that because if I'm not mistaken, there are not many immigration attorneys that are within the state of Louisiana. Are they detained and there's a legal process that plays out, or
the first legal process, yes, is that you ask for a bond for them, but they only can get a bond if this administration has interpreted that people who have overstayed a visa or who have come in with a coyote, they are not eligible. That's not, in my view, and in the previous view of the other administrations, because immigration law is very much like a lot of discretion of the agency. It used to be that you could get a bond. Now it's very hard. But once you got a bond, you then help prepare for your deportation case. If you don't have a bond, you sit there. I have another person who's been sitting there since January, and he's still there because we're appealing his case. So January, and we are now in December, almost a year.
And he's been sitting in jail that whole time.
Jail or detention facility. Usually what happens is they pick them up, put them in jail, and then ICE picks them up if the local police got them, right? The sheriff, whatever. But yeah, then they're in a detention facility. We have 8. We're the second largest detention place in the United States for undocumented after Texas.
Yes.
Okay, and that obviously has expanded recently with
Right.
Camp J, as you mentioned, at Angola now being used for immigration detention. But I just want to make a point real quick. Jeff Landry posted on X about 13 minutes ago, the governor saying, entering this country illegally, I'm just reading here, doesn't make you immune from the law. If you commit crimes here, you face consequences, just like any citizen who breaks the law. Louisiana will not be a refuge for violent offenders. We stand with our federal partners and the law enforcement officers who protect our people every day. He then goes on to thank President Trump and Secretary Noem for ensuring Louisiana has the resources and coordination to keep residents safe. And then Kristi Noem replied, the men and women of DHS law enforcement have landed in the Big Easy. Operation Catahoula Crunch, as they're calling it, will remove the worst of the worst from New Orleans, Louisiana, after the city's sanctuary politicians have ignored the rule of law. Law and order will prevail. Now, talk about the sanctuary city part of this and that piece. Obviously, that is a political touch point here.
Sure, but let me say, immigration law by definition, since the Supreme Court in many years, is federal law. So the immigration system is controlled by the federal government. Each state can decide whom they want in their state and what their immigration status is. It doesn't mean a state can grant an immigration status, but it means if you're coming here, you don't have the papers, but we need your work, particularly if they're not violent, because part of the violation of immigration law would be working with our organization. But working means you have an employer and a company. If it's just you're an independent contractor, you're not really doing that violation of immigration law. Then the states can decide then to, I'm not going to cooperate with ICE, and they get called sanctuary city, but there's no provision of the law that says, I'm a sanctuary city. It's just, I don't cooperate with the federal government, because to be perfectly honest, it's an unfunded mandate. Right?
Yes.
They're not helping the local. The only where people are making money is in detention, right? Because those detainees, federal government pays local. But so far as I know, getting more people on the street. We can use help always in the sense of safety for everyone. You know how it is in the French Quarter, but that has nothing to do with citizenship status and much more to do with socioeconomic and racial issues.
Yeah, I think my question here about us being the city of New Orleans being a sanctuary city is what happens when someone is accused of a crime, first arrested, second convicted. When we hear the Department of Homeland Security saying that we picked up this list of people who are dangerous criminals who've been in Louisiana and who have been let go by local jails. Right. What are we talking about there? Do you have any sense of that?
Yes. So, because again, immigration law is federal law. So if you have state criminal charges, typically you get picked up by the state police and the state or sheriff, and then they put you through the process through state, like anyone would, right? For any kind of
anytime anyone commits a crime. Yeah.
Right. And typically then they notify ICE, and it's over time it's evolved that a lot of state agencies are notifying ICE immediately, and instead of having to just prosecute them, they get them removed, because you don't have to be convicted of a crime to be removed. The newest law that passed, what was the name of the young woman? It was the first law that President Trump signed. I forget her name, but that law, that law says that you're deportable even if you're accused of a crime of turpitude and violence and all that.
So
that's the only one that's changed. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we're trying to, confirm this list of people who, the Department of Homeland Security, Paul Murphy, let me borrow his phone there, this list of people who Homeland Security says that it picked up. We're trying to figure out whether or not those are people who have actually been convicted of crimes, or if they're still awaiting trial.
They pick up they're concerned, they're picking up anyone who's not a U.S. citizen. They could even be LPRs or citizens. Mm-hmm. There's lawsuits of U.S. citizens being picked up and held for 2 days, even though they were proving that they were citizenship.
But when we politically hear them saying, these people were let go by law enforcement, that could just be a bond, right? Like that they could have bonded out?
They're going to go back to their hearings.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What we have is, typically what we have is people coming to immigration and then getting arrested.
Yeah,
right?
that's what I was going to ask you that. You have a lot of people who are coming to their appointments and going through the process. Are we seeing a lot of people who are not showing up, and that's leading to them being arrested because of the fear of something happening when they get to court?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, you are putting the immigrant in an impossible situation. Either you comply, you came here, your visa expired, or you came with a coyote, and you're fearing persecution. You file for it. Yeah, Lake and Riley, that's the name of the law. The only law that's changed, the Lake and Riley Act. So if you come and you ask for asylum, and it takes a year and a half, 2 years, 3 years to have you here, typical practice is you get a work permit, and you stay here working until they can adjudicate whether you have a valid asylum claim.
Okay.
But if they pick you up and put you in detention because you're here with no papers or expired visa, so the asylum application, it's Form I-589, is not a granting status of anything except that you can work, and it used to be you could stick around, but now they're interpreting it differently.
Okay,
And
so
they
that's and there's just a lot of latitude in immigration law, right? I mean, that's really the big concern is that we feel it also almost seems like we're playing by an unspecified set of rules at this point.
Yes, it certainly is. And I think that's I think that's what's the confusing part. I said, I know that there is the law, there are a certain number of rules, there are certain limitations as to who they can pick up, who they can go for, and it feels like it's all being thrown out of the window, and everyone is being picked up and being swept up in something.
When you have when you have no enforcement priorities, you're just picking up everyone indiscriminately. That's when the really bad people have the resources to hide, right? The big cartels, the big human traffickers, those will not be the ones that are going to pick up in the indiscriminate sweeps. Those know where to hide, and they do it.
Right, understandable. All right, Maria Pabon Lopez, she's at Loyola Law School, professor there. Thank you so much for giving us your insight.
You're welcome.
Hopefully you can stand by, because obviously this is a lot of moving parts. You can't see it here, but there's a lot of moving parts behind the scenes in the studio right now as we cover this, and this is a story that continues to unfold. So thank you so much for giving us your insight.
It's been my pleasure. Take care. Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And we, again, have confirmed several locations where Border Patrol agents have been spotted and documented around the New Orleans area, all the way from Laplace, from a Lowe's in a Home Depot in Laplace, a Lowe's in Metairie, the Lowe's at Elysian Fields. We have heard online, and we haven't confirmed this yet, but some areas like these stores have been hit in Mississippi as well.
South Mississippi, yes.
So also some construction sites, some homes have had Border Patrol agents show up to those construction sites, taking a number of people into custody there as well.
All right. I don't know. I'm just going to jump in. Glenn Wasserstein is joining us right now on set. I don't know if my producer is ready for him to come on, but I'm just going to go ahead and bring him anyway. Good to see you. I feel like we've talked to you throughout this entire ordeal in different stories that we've talked about. So now the day is finally here that we've said leading up to this point. Your thoughts on the arrest that we're seeing right now and how this is playing out so far, and this is just the beginning.
So this is just the first moments of this whole situation. So we really don't have a lot of information yet. We have no statistics, but based on Chicago and based on Charlotte, I want the public to know that this is not the worst of the worst, that less than 5% of the people in detention right now have serious criminal convictions.
Okay.
Okay. Now this is warrantless sweeps. So what they're doing is they're utilizing the Supreme Court's recent decision, allowing racial profiling for the first time in 50 years. Which is a really shameful thing for this country. They're utilizing that, and they're pushing it to its limits, and they're just stopping anyone who's brown or black. And they're harassing them, and they're not even giving them a chance to prove that they're U.S. citizens. They're simply harassing them. This is a whole new type of immigration enforcement, and it's really just beginning, and the ugliness is just starting.
Doesn't that make your job difficult, especially when you have people that are being picked up or arrested, or clients that are being picked up and arrested, and they're not able to, they're immediately detained, and they're not able to prove that they are in the country legally? Do we see people being asked that question? Because there are circumstances where they said someone asked if my husband, we heard someone ask if my husband was legal. He said he was legal, and they let him move forward. But then there were instances like we saw from our Paul Murphy, the reporter, who told us that we just seen a number of people getting picked up at construction sites. Do you have that possibility to show that you are here legally, or that you are in the process of being here legally, or are they all swept up in one big move?
So I'm not going to say every ICE agent and every Border Patrol agent is violating the law and being violent, but a lot of them are. And a lot of them are violating their own rules. So DHS, and I can only assume this is coming from above, DHS agents, including ICE and Border Patrol, are violating the law, violating their own rules. They're approaching people for no other reason than being Hispanic looking. Now, that is an expansion of what the Supreme Court allowed. They simply put a stay on racial profiling as race only. It's been 50 years since you can use race only to pull over someone and to speak to them. Now they can, and ICE is running with that. I don't see any way to advise people, like you were saying, when they're not following their own laws. And their own rules.
What are you telling your clients at this point?
I'm telling the employers to not let them in any private spaces. And this is very important. So if one of them comes into your business and says, I want to see your employee records, you say, do you have a notice of inspection? They're supposed to have a notice of inspection in order to get your records. If they say, yes, I have one, here it is, then you exercise your 3 days. You have 3 days to produce those employee records for an NOI. Okay? They don't tell you that, but you have 3 days to say, I'll give it to you in 3 days, give me your number. If they come in and want to go in the back and investigate your employees, say, no, that's a private space, do you have a warrant? And if they only have an ICE warrant, an I-205 or an I-200, that's not a valid search warrant. They don't have the right to go into any private spaces, into any residence. So I think the key here is for residences, don't open the door. Say no at the door, through the door. For businesses, don't let them in any private spaces and exercise your rights, saying, I'm exercising my right to not let you into these private spaces unless you have a judicial warrant. They rarely have a judicial warrant.
I can't imagine the fear associated with this situation, given that there are so many questions about who's being picked up and whether or not there is any sort of real legal defense for people, or if they're just being shipped right back.
So they're being shipped around the country. So this is an interesting point you're bringing up. So when someone was picked up in New York or Chicago or Charlotte, they were being shipped to Louisiana in order to keep them from their attorneys, from their community, from their families.
Like we saw with Mahmoud Khalil.
Yeah, so, exactly. So what are they going to do now when the people they pick up in Louisiana and near the facility? Are they going to ship them to Minnesota or going to ship them to California? We really don't know. But they're trying to instill fear into the immigrant community, and that is bad for the nation overall.
I feel like this is kind of descending into chaos because the rules of law are there for a reason, to kind of keep order and to let people know this is what we can do, this is what we can't do. And since we're seeing so many of these sweeps happening across the country, some that have grown more violent than others, I'm mentioning that because of what we've seen in Chicago, where there were tear gas and whatnot, and we were even seeing reports here of them coming down, Border Patrol agents, when they came down to Louisiana, they were bringing certain things that they need. I don't know necessarily if they need it here, but bringing certain things here to assist in these raids. There are a lot of people who are confused by what is the law. So look legally on both sides, as far as a Border Patrol agent goes and for a citizen here. Can we just get some clarification? Because even the comments that I'm seeing on our social media pages are saying that we are in the wrong, and I'm almost sure that we are not. We're just trying to give you some clarity as to what can legally happen on both ends here.
So you are not in the wrong, I'll tell you that right now.
Right.
So a lot of people online are saying illegal immigrants have no constitutional rights. That's clearly false. Okay, of course they have rights. They have slightly less rights than we do as American citizens, but of course they have rights. They have the right to remain silent. They have the right to be free from unreasonable search and seizure under the Fourth Amendment. So I want to stress that to the people in this region, that while these people are not legally here, they have legal rights.
Okay.
And that they're not being followed. So the legal rules are not being followed by our current government. Our current government is somewhat lawless.
All right, well, we're going to get back to you in just a moment. We want to check in with Devin Bartolotta, who's standing by, because we're getting more reports of seeing Border Patrol agents around the metro area. So, Devin, what have you found out for us?
Yeah, hey, Katie and Charisse, we have gotten a lot of videos into the newsroom of various immigration raids throughout the area. We're sifting through them right now and seeing where all of them are. Some of those videos coming from viewers, others are coming from various community groups. This video here is from the Lowe's on Elysian Fields. And this video goes for about 30 minutes. We've been talking about the raid that happened at that Lowe's on Elysian Fields today. A witness told us at least a dozen people were detained in this instance by immigration officials. You can see their vehicles in the parking lot here. And those people who were detained had to leave their trucks, their bikes, all their tools behind. We know that there was a community group there trying to get those things back to those people's families. And again, this video goes on for about 30 minutes until you see all of those vehicles leave the parking lot there. Our next video here we have is from Union Migrante. This is a local advocacy group we've interviewed multiple times here. This home is in Kenner. It's on Marquette Drive at East Louisiana State Drive in Kenner. And Union Migrante says that there was some roof work being done on this home. Immigration officials showed up. You can see one here with a rifle, it appears, with a scope on it. And there were some men on the roof here. 2 men were taken into custody in this situation. And Union Migrante says the homeowner was not home at the time of all of this happening and was quite upset whenever they returned home. There were neighbors out. You can see them here taking video on their phone and kind of watching everything happen. And they said that they were there and gone within about 15 to 20 minutes.
Devin, we're hearing that the national media, you can see some members of the press at some of these locations. So those videos that you're seeing, lots of national media, lots of attention happening on this. So really a lot of these incidents that are happening right now in South Louisiana are going around the world. You can see right there, that video was obtained by CNN. So several CNN correspondents are on the ground here just as we are out and about in the community.
Yeah, right now we want to go over to Devin first before I go to Whitney. Thank you so much for that update. Are there any more updates that you want to share with us?
Yeah, I just wanted to explain what this video had in it here. This is the Home Depot in Laplace. The person who shot this video told CNN that this was her husband who was stopped to be asked about his immigration status. He was apparently born in Mexico. He's a legal permanent resident, but told agents that and was eventually let go. So then she told CNN that her husband watched someone be detained as well outside of this. We've also seen some posts about immigration raids in Mississippi along the coast, so we're working now to get those confirmed. So I'll let you guys take over from here.
All right, Devin, thank you so much. And we want to go out to Whitney Miller. We showed you video. Devin talked about this. One of the raids that happened that was, actually we saw video and pictures of this, of ICE agents and Border Patrol agents on the roof of a home. Whitney, what's the feeling around there right now?
Yeah, hey you all. We're in Kenner on Marquette Street and Louisiana State. And I spoke with the homeowner of the home who was not here at the time when this raid began. She was at work and she said her phone started to blow up around 1 o'clock. She got here about 1:20 and was told she was getting a roof replaced, and this is from Francine. She was told that 2 or so people were detained and taken away, but the whole job had to stop because the people that were on the roof, the ICE agents were trying to figure out if they were had a legal status. She was under the impression, based on her contractor, that these employees all had their visas. Apparently, she heard from one of the workers' immigration attorney who was on scene that they all had visas, and I think that ICE was looking for 1 or so people. She was told that about 2 people were taken from here, but that ICE told that immigration lawyer that all the people that were working had to be off of the property. She's very upset because this work it's been almost, when was Francine? A long time ago. So she wanted to get this home fixed, and the roof was her first major project to start getting that done. And they started around 6 o'clock this morning, she says. So she was, she's confused. She says she's upset. She says because this work got stopped, but also more so, she says she works with a lot of children, and there's been a lot of fear just at the school, in the neighborhood, kids concerned about their parents because their parents are scared. So there's a lot happening. She was confused, talking to us, letting us know what she heard, but she said even her information was secondhand information because she was not here at the time. I also talked to another neighbor on this street who came outside when there were a lot of people out watching, having cameras, documenting what was happening. And even she says that she was unaware what was going on. She's also very concerned. She's a first generation American in her family, and she said that, she's under the impression that they're looking for people who have maybe criminal backgrounds, but she feels like it's kind of going beyond that. So a lot of confusion in this neighborhood, a lot of concern, and then, homeowners concern too. But the contractor, I guess I should also mention, the contractor did come back and they are going to continue working on this, but the workers are not here. So it's only now, we saw maybe 1 or 2 people get back up on the roof to try to plug up some holes, but what was supposed to be, she said, a 1-day job. She's not sure when it will be complete now. So that's what I know from here. I know that a lot of her neighbors have been calling her and checking on her. They thought something was happening to her. She said she got a lot of calls asking if she was okay. And she comes home to find out this is what was going on here. ICE and Border Patrol here, immigration attorneys on scene, trying to, I guess, mitigate what was going on. From that video that Devin showed, she talked about how two of the people that were on the roof, they were just laying there. They didn't speak to the agents. I think one of those people, that was the immigration attorney's client. So I think they were able to get down and they were not detained. But I was told that at least one person was taken from here with Border Patrol. And as you can see, they're up on the roof there now, trying to plug any holes that they created when they started this work at 6-something this morning.
All right. Whitney, thank you. Glenn, can you speak to that? Thank you so much, Whitney. We're going to check back in a second. But we talked about this in a story earlier this week when we talk about the economic disadvantages and situations like that where we see a lot of work come to a pause or really start to slow down as a lot of these raids happen. So are we seeing big projects that are being paused in the city? I know that there was a public project that was happening on Mirabeau Avenue where there was a major raid that happened. That was months ago before this even started, but a major raid happened. And so obviously that forces some work to slow down. What's the economic disadvantage in this?
Well, there's definitely a slowdown in local construction projects. I think people need to remember that we were calling these same people, these same hardworking immigrants, essential workers just 4 years ago. They were keeping us fed during the pandemic. They were keeping our factories going, our farms running. They're still essential workers. They still play an essential role in our community. Besides the humanitarian aspects of it, we need more workers here. It's very hard to find workers. So removing 12 million workers is simply irrational. But sometimes emotion overwhelms rational economic thought in this country, and people are taking pleasure in sort of the suffering of immigrants.
And in this case, you know, we've heard a lot from Homeland Security. Their standard line is that they're going after, you know, hardened criminals who, you know, are in our communities to try and make Louisiana in particular safer. Talk about that a little bit, and what has been your experience with that statement?
First of all, we're all for the removal of dangerous criminal aliens from the United States. I know of no one who thinks they should stay here. Okay, we're already doing that. We've been doing that for years and years. The situation right now is not that. They're lying. It's a fraud. Less than 5% of people in detention right now have violent criminal convictions. Less than 20% have any criminal convictions, and the majority of those are traffic violations. So they're not making our city any safer. We don't have an immigrant crime problem in New Orleans. We have hardworking, family-oriented immigrants.
No, I would say that Kenner's police chief would disagree with you on that. He, you know, has been very outspoken about the fact that he feels like the immigrant community in Kenner is causing him a big problem in terms of policing. So how does that jive with what you just said?
The Kenner sheriff is openly racist. I disagree with him. I think the Honduran community and the Hispanic community in Kenner is an excellent, wonderful, law-abiding community, and he's simply making that up.
All right. I'm sorry, I was just hearing from our producer right now. So right now we are talking about, and I just want to clarify something that, again, I understand that this can be a very political situation.
Yes.
And we want to make sure that we get the accurate information that is out there. And of course, as we get more information into our studio, we'll continue to give you more information on our website, WWLTV.com. and WWL Plus. Glenn Wasserstein, thank you so much for joining us on set right here. We had Maria Pavone Lopez earlier. Again, if you're seeing anything in your neighborhood, let us know, 504-529-4444. Our reporters are combing the grounds right now, wanting to check situations out. And again, this is something that is just starting and something we're going to continue to talk about.
Yes, it's of course a very hot button issue politically. It is a hot button issue from the humanitarian perspective, from an economic perspective, and we're trying to get all of those angles covered for everyone out there and document it in a fair way so that we can get you the information that you need to make important decisions out there as this operation continues to unfold. So I think that's going to do it for us right now. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll have the latest for you on WWL Louisiana at 5.
This has been breaking news from WWL Louisiana.